So, been in facilities for a few years. I am the ultimate poacher turned gamekeeper because I spent most of my career as a service provider, and strangely ironic, part of that time was a service provider to GSK way back in the day. So I tend to find that with the title of Head of Service Performance and Development, that LinkedIn community thinks I'm in IT. I have a colleague who's going to be joining the room sooner. He would be roaring laughing now because I am the least techie person you're going to meet today. But I do know what I want from technology, and I do know what I want it to do for me. So I want to talk today about the way we've used technology to drive performance, and set a little bit of context about GSK and the Worldwide Real Estate and Facilities Group, and what we're doing to try and help us to get on top of the data that drives every decision that we make. I should also add that before joining GSK, I spent 4 or 5 years in a retail environment. That's a really nice way of saying I work for a pub company. So I've spent a previous life making people ill, and this life, a lot of my focus is on making people better. But it made me more connected with the customer than I've ever been in my career, because we effectively lived or died by the service that we gave to the customer. So it's enabled me to bring a little bit of a different perspective to GSK. This feels counterintuitive, but I'm hoping it's going to go to the next slide. No? Aha. So GSK, a global healthcare company on a mission. You will see the term, we help people to feel better, do more, and live longer. Our history includes a lot of brands that you will know, 2 of which we no longer have anymore, but looking at the demographics in the room, you must all remember those orange bottles with crinkly paper on that was Lucozade before it went mainstream. That's a GSK product, or was a GSK product. We sold it when it went mainstream. You will all have had Ribena when you were a little kid because it was your only source of vitamin C. That went mainstream. We moved on from that. But anybody who's asthmatic in the room, you're probably using one of our products. Anybody who uses Sensodyne, you're using one of our products. So a broad range of products that impact the world. And our business split into medicines, vaccines, and consumer. So in terms of size and scale, our pharmaceuticals division, 4 billion packs of medicine every year. Massive part of the business, primarily research into respiratory diseases and to HIV/AIDS related illnesses. A wide range of conditions, something new coming all the time, and as you can imagine, a very dynamic market for us to be in. You get 15 years from the point a molecule is discovered to actually get it to market, to be accepted in market before somebody else starts making it. In vaccines, 800 million doses in 2014 for children and adults, and heavily involved in a lot of the diseases that have hit the world recently, where we had to get things to market very, very quickly to deal with epidemics. And 18 billion packs of our consumer products. Really, they exist in a number of categories, so wellness, the whole piece there, skin health, oral health, which is toothpaste and mouthwash, and nutrition. I think that's the term we use for maxi muscle. A lot of people don't necessarily see that as nutrition. Okay. So, Worldwide Real Estate and Facilities is the division that I work for in REF. We're tasked, as the title would suggest, in looking after real estate and facilities. But the services that we provide to our customers are primarily outsourced to external service providers. We behave as a standalone company. We view ourselves that if we went out to the free market, we would be able to provide real estate and facilities management services to any organisation. We look after 782 properties in 115 countries, which are occupied by 110,000 people. So big footprint, 55 million square feet. It's important to note that the real estate aspect of what we do is global. The facilities management aspect of what we do is really restricted to the US, the UK and Asia Pacific. But we are now growing our reach as far as FM is concerned. And it's important to note we don't have a mandate. So people in GSK don't get told you've got to use these guys to operate your FM facilities. Hence the need for us to function as a real estate FM company and be able to provide benefit to the business. We work with a two-tier model. We have a provider for hard services, which is CBRE, previously JCI, so through acquisition CBRE, and with Sodexo for soft services. It is our intent to go to a single provider at the end of this contract. And we are just in the process, hence my attendance here and my colleagues' attendance here, we're just in the process of doing a very, very detailed market review to understand what's going on and how we compare in that world. So we're looking at the services that will require and the future in the industry. So the fact that we operate as a real estate and facilities company and want to work in that way, we have our own value proposition, because as I said, we don't have mandate to actually deliver these services to any of the people within GSK. Market leading expertise and innovation, delivering highly efficient services, enhancing our customers' productivity. So I think there was a question earlier about, what do people want and what do people need. We are very, very focused on what the needs of the different business units are. Trust me, a group of people in the R&D world, where it takes them 15 years to take a product from one stage to the next, behave very differently to the people in the consumer health division, which is an FMCG piece, who move at a much, much faster pace. It's important that we're able to say to people that because we're part of GSK, we share their values, we share their vision, and the customer intimacy is particularly important. We work with customer boards in our different business units to actually evidence to them the way we are performing and adding value to their business. So I think there was some conversations earlier on about the value that you can truly drive and measure out of the value proposition. So we have to report on that to say, this is what we did for you. And we use a term of trying to be externally productive for the people we provide services to. We're helping their productivity, but internally efficient. We're doing that in an optimised fashion and customer focused. Very much one of the things that I brought to the business when I came from retail, there was a huge sigh amongst the REF leadership team when I said, we need to do a survey. But we weren't surveying people's satisfaction. We were surveying what were the services we provided that mattered most to people in terms of what they were doing. It became very, very clear, as being in retail, anybody who's been there, that 8:15 Monday morning meeting, what was the trading like last week? So being used to having data on a regular basis, data was becoming increasingly important to worldwide real estate and facilities. And so we had to find a way of managing that data most effectively to get some really good quality analytics out of it, because data is only data until you do something with it, until it drives performance in your business. And so we moved to the REF Knowledge Centre, effectively known as the KC, on an ongoing basis. It's based in New Delhi in India. It's run by a company called WNS, and they do all of GSK's analytics. So these are guys who have the capability to run the data from clinical trials. You've got to believe they get things right, as far as that's concerned. And they work in a very linear fashion, in that you get allocated a team of people who will work with you. And so we are working with 3 analysts who are completely dedicated to worldwide real estate and facilities, of the 550 people who work for GSK in the New Delhi facility. WNS globally have got about 30,000 people, so it's a sizable organisation. And it's possibly, inside GSK, one of the best kept secrets. because people use it for the analytics, but they never really get the profile that they need. So as I said, dedicated analytical team. Thousands of pieces of data that they're providing. They are trolling that data for us direct from our service providers. So they go into Sodexo's connections system and pull the data. They go into CBRE's system, pull the data. They go into our own internal systems and pull the data. So that is the part that's really taken us most of this year to get up to speed, to get it automated, so that becomes a much easier process instead of being something that we do manually. So 2015 to 16 for us has been about getting the data aligned, getting them to understand who we are, what we do, and as we move forward, the guy who's running this service for me and my team, his challenge before the end of this year is 4 pieces of good quality analytics. Not just data presented in a pretty format, but what's it telling us? And next year we're moving to the analytics phase of this, so for our site leads throughout the business can understand what the data is telling them. So just to show you how we use it, surprise, surprise, it's all produced in dashboards. And the dashboards are produced by service, by site, and by what we call towers. So as far as the services are concerned, we've got one there that we're looking at for housekeeping. It sets the benchmark for the service, both internally and externally. And this is where I should say that we are doing a whole load of work as part of our value proposition to benchmark ourselves externally. So we've been sure that the data dictionary that we use in terms of what each piece of the service means matches the gem code system, some of you might be familiar with. So we know we can start to measure services with external providers in the relative space, be that scientific space or corporate office space. We league table, because everybody likes a good league table. They're effective for a short period of time, but we can do that by region, we can do that by type of business. Very important part, we look at the satisfaction rate, and specifically on housekeeping. The services where we can look at satisfaction, where customers make a view in the moment of service, just like you do when you come through the airport, when you do your happy or nots. We've got just under 200 happy or not terminals out there in the business at the moment where people are giving us in the moment feedback. We've been able to use it very, very effectively to feed that data in and to know on a daily basis when that data is on the screens where on a site we've got a problem. Variance from budget they look at. Our contracts all have glide path built into them, so they know that they're looking at how that scores. Audit scores, checklist completion rate. So our site leads and our service providers are all being able to look at this data at the same time, so we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. If we move on to one of the site operations dashboards, note the name. This is a site in the US. It's an AV yard. It's in Philadelphia. We're going to come back to look at this one later, but as a site operator, this is where the service provider data is pulled together with our own internal data. So where we're looking at capital projects, where we're looking at population data. Embarrassing but true, we find it really hard to know how many people we have on sites. The difference between how many people are allocated to that site, and because we're completely smart worked, doesn't mean they're going to turn up at that site. It means they may go somewhere else. They're there for part of a day. So we're looking constantly at the way the population's moving relative to the service. Meeting rooms, I think we've heard some conversations earlier, but looking at the number of reservations, looking at how many people actually turn up, I like that part. And benchmarking costs both internally and externally. So each site, when they sit down with their line manager, can look at, here's how my site has performed for a period of time. This information, as we move on to the alpha version of this, is going to become dynamic, so they will be looking at it on a day-by-day basis. And I talked about the towers, so we have 3 towers: hard services, soft services, and scientific services. We have our own internal subject matter experts against each of those, but we're able to look in this instance at the infrastructure tower and look at the things that matter to them, look at their RAG-rated dashboards. So everybody in the organisation can say to their line manager at any time, here's how my business is performing, these are where my priorities are. But more importantly, we can assimilate this data in any way that we like through the KC, so we can go to our customers. So when my colleagues go to the customer boards with the consumer health or pharma, I mean literally just before I came to speak here, I got a call from a college saying pharma want to know this and this about their sites. And I know it will take one contact to the KC for them to pull that data and assimilate it in the format that we want. So in the infrastructure tower, it's very much about knowing that we spent what we said we were going to spend on what we said we were going to spend it on. That's a new departure for some of our project managers who perhaps historically said, I've got a chunk of cash and my job's to spend it. We're now saying, no, these are the things we said we'd do, that's how much we said it would cost, that's what's got to be delivered. This probably seems a bit big brother, but we do track who uses it. So we track who and how they use the data. And it's interesting that, you can't see the commentary down the side, but right in the middle, there's a line that says unit cost dashboards. We report as an organisation into our Chief Information Officer. A bit strange for real estate and facilities, but that's the way it is. Who has an obsession with unit cost, because it's the way he's worked in the IT world and the way we're now starting to work to understand, bring things down to a core measurement to know how we're doing comparatively. And so we're currently looking very hard at establishing those unit costs and being able to report out on them. So here we're tracking how many minutes are spent on each dashboard. There's another version of that pulls very easily to say who's looked for how long. So having given people a reminder about unit costs tomorrow, guess what? We're now tracking, now they've had a reminder, what have they done about it? That feels a bit big brother, but it helps us to know who's using the system and getting value out of it and who's really not making best use of the data. So let me move on to a few examples. So remember I said Navy Yard. So here we have the GSK average. Doesn't mean it's right, but it's the average cost of housekeeping. A lot of the sites sort of clustered around it, some way below, we know the reasons why, but there's Navy Yard right up there. So we're working on a programme of service standardisation. Have they been through the standardisation? Have they rationalised services? Yes, they have. Do we know how the cost of the service is made up? Well, we do. It's time and materials, and there's not a lot of variation. The building is the building is the building. Any reasons for costs to vary? Well, we happen to know that in Navy Yard we use a third-party minority vendor who's heavily unionised. So we pay union rates, and we're inside the city of Philadelphia. We pay city wage taxes as well. We also know that we have a site director there who has a forensic ability to spot a finger mark on any pane of glass and wants something done about it in the moment. And it's a very glass-dense atrium-style building. So where we're at now is, okay, well, we get all this stuff here about the labour rates and the minority contract and what have you, but how much of the variance in the cost that pushes it up there is to do with things that we can do nothing about it? And how much is about things that we can do something about? Given we also know the customer satisfaction there is 89%. People like their building, they think it's very, very well maintained. And so the question that we're now able to ask ourselves is, could we deliver the service for less? Is it as internally efficient as we would like it to be? Or could we maybe even scale the service back slightly and still have happy customers, but at a reduced cost? So it's getting us into asking questions of ourselves that are much more detailed than we did in the past. So it would be true to say in the past it will be, oh, that's to do with rates of pay and union rates of pay, and not get into the detail of what's the reason for this happening. So I've talked a couple of times about using an external company to look at the people's efforts that they expend on engaging with our services. We used a company called Market Force, some of you might be familiar with, very big in the retail world. They introduced us to a new departure from previously people looking at Net Promoter Score, but to look at customer effort score. How easy is it to work in the buildings that we look after? And what we found was the services that were most important to people, surprise, surprise, started with lab instrument services and lab services, but then the third was fitness. The next was food service, and then we went into the usual meeting manager and AV services. So the boxes that you see in white are the services that people said, okay, well, this is how important it is to us, but we were actually exceeding their expectations. So we don't put a lot of management effort at the moment into evaluating fitness, ground transportation or document solutions, because our customers say, this is okay, we can engage with this service, it's relatively effortless. Lab instrument support and lab services, we spend $3 billion a year on R&D. If we can't provide the services to those PhD scientists to let them go head down and focus on the science, we're actually compromising the mission of the organisation. Then they also went on to talk to us about the services that they had the most significant problems with. 25% of people told us they had a problem with catering to meeting rooms. We sorted that one out really easily, we took it away. Not strictly true, we took some of it away. We'd only had two voice of the customer comments about that catering in a year, so we were blithely thinking, catering's fine because nobody's making any noise. The reality was something different, so it helped us to get into the services that were most important. And all this data feeds into the knowledge centre, so it allows our people to do that balance between the cost of a service, how important it is to people, and what their relative level of performance is in that moment of time. So they've got the three dimensions of where the right place is to be for that service. Another of the services, we use Meeting Manager. Sorry about that. But one of the comments that we got around that from the survey that we did was that it was really difficult to book meeting rooms and it was too complicated and they found it really difficult. So we were able to do something internally that put Meeting Manager into an app that they could put on their phones and simplify a quick book service that improved our satisfaction ratings and the ease of working by something like 35%. So it was a massive improvement. So we've had to do a really big campaign off the back of the learnings that we're getting from the analysis of the data. We've done a massive comms campaign to tell the customer that good old-fashioned way, you said, we did. So you said, the data told us this is what we did about it, this is the improvement that we've made. So what comes next? We've set about standardising services to be sure that whatever we find as best practice we can devolve to all of our sites and implementing it. We're just in the process of, we've done a survey with our consumer health group of resurveying, but we're now moving into optimisation. But we're looking now from the data that we've got and everything that we've learned through using the KC and using market force at some improvements to service. So I know that's really difficult to read, but if I just call out a few. So we've improved the AV response time at our site in North Carolina at RTP by 50%. So people get AV service much, much quicker than they ever got it before. We've put self-checkout systems into our cafes. We've put new shuttles on and sites in the Delaware Valley. We've upgraded 35% of the meeting rooms in the US. We've introduced a MyFitnessPal app that people can use within our gyms. We piloted a new program for lab coats, which, trust me, are really important. Whether you're a biologist or a chemist, they want their name. We've effectively managed to persuade them they don't need the name anymore. It's made massive savings on lab coats. We've improved the room check performance on the AV service in the UK by 40%. So lots of things that have improved people's ease of access to our services and helped us to reduce cost and helped us to better position ourselves to our clients to say this is the calibre of service that we provide. It's been a lot of work over 2 years, maybe 2.5 years. We're just on the border of breaking into it, driving real value for us. But we feel It's enabled us to really function as a professional real estate and facilities organisation, using management information in a way that adds value to the customer. And the real driving force to us is every pound that we take out of the cost of services that we provide goes to the R&D organisation. And that, at the end of the day, is why we're all there. So thank you very much.
Wow.